Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Bioshock Survivor difficulty video walkthrough. This will also get you brass balls, and I chose the impossible depending on the console that you're playing this on, as we're entering the Proving Grounds, which is another one of the levels that I infinitely despise, mainly because of collision, mainly because of the awful hood. Now we were wearing this weird helmet. But you might be wondering, how do I get I chose the impossible? How do I get brass balls? You know, what is the difference and all that kind of interesting nuance when it comes to achievements and trophies? Well, on Microsoft systems, there is no benefit for not using vita chambers on Survivor outside of challenge. And what will happen is, when you get to the end of the game and you beat it, you will not get your brass balls achievement. You have to reload the game at the final boss, put it on hard difficulty, and then beat the boss again, and then you will get your achievement, which is not difficult to do because you've just done it on Survivor, so you're already way ahead of a lot of players when it comes to your ability to play this game. Speaking of, I watched an interesting top 10 the other day. It was just a random one from like 5 years ago. It was top 10 like ridiculously hard achievements, and I thought certain things would be on this video that weren't on this video, and some of the stuff that was on it was ridiculous, because I had like 9 out of the 10 achievements, and I didn't think much of them were that ridiculous, really. One of them was Living Legends on Guitar Hero 3, which admittedly, it can be very difficult to find anybody who is half as good as you are on Guitar Hero who lives near you. That's a tough thing to do, and I was lucky enough to have the guy who got me into Guitar Hero, who's also really, really good at it. So at that time, the idea of 5-starring the entire set list, well, the entire campaign set list on Expert, was not intimidating because both of us had done it solo, and we were both pretty good at that game. So that was just, it's all about having somebody who's as your match or your equal or better than you, which is tough. But the game itself, once you get good at Guitar Hero, you can generally get to a decent level where most of the achievements aren't too bad. Some of them are insane, of course, but for the most, that generally involves drumming or some kind of really high score on some ridiculous songs. So I didn't understand why that was on the list. But then he had brass balls. Like, just beating the game on hard, no vita chambers. Like, that's not even hard, dude. Like, what the fuck? And I appreciate that some of these lists are crazy and subjective and that, but this is the same guy who didn't put Mile High Club on it because he doesn't think it's as hard as everybody else thinks it is. And admittedly, once you know where to use flashbangs on Mile High Club, and it's just kind of about getting that lucky run, and you can do it quite consistently if you get good enough at it, but you can still die at any moment just thanks to bad luck. So it's still really difficult because of the luck dependency factor. But the dude doesn't put Mile High Club on this list and then goes on to say that that's not difficult, yet puts fucking Bioshock on hard? What? Come on now, son. That's just not right. But it was a weird list, to say the least. But back on topic anyway. Defend a little sister, put down trap bolts, put down proxy grenades, use telekinesis. It's not very difficult, guys. Just, if she dies, get a new one. They are really disposable when it comes to the whole little baby girl thing. It's kind of grim, but it doesn't really matter. We're at the end of the game. The achievements are close to being yours. So, that's how you get brass balls, anyhow. On PlayStation, there is an achievement for beating Survivor difficulty without the vita chambers called I Chose the Impossible. I think it might even be a gold trophy, a gold or silver one. So for that, just follow this walkthrough, and then you don't have to worry about it. I don't know if they still have brass balls, but once again, if they do, load your save, drop the difficulty, beat the boss, get your other trophy. You don't have to play it again. Very, very simple, guys. And that's what you will learn if you've been using this particular guide. But in the previous video, I was talking about this interesting social acceptance of gaming and this social criticism that you get oftentimes by parents, by peers, by society, you know, by media. Doesn't really matter. There are all kinds of different stereotypes that circulate around gaming, and I always find them interesting to analyse. So that's what we're going to do here, guys, because this is just kill stuff. Telekinesis, kill somebody, grab their body, throw it at their friend, grab their body, throw it at their friend, repeat ad nauseum, you win. Try not to get too frustrated by the collision, because it's a nightmare. So, gaming is way more acceptable now than it's ever been in any period of history, because the people who were gamers as children, who put up with a lot of this prejudice in a lot of ways, and a lot of these weird pseudo-science bullshit, kind of wives' tales, white lie to try and essentially get you to play outside. So I assume your parents could have sex. I think that's the the thing that they were moving towards. It was always the idea of being outside is better than being inside because you're away from your parents and you enable them to have a semblance of what their life was like before you. And I think that's kind of, you know, the main goal that we don't talk about. But going back some time, playing outside was kind of the thing, wasn't it? Before paedophiles were invented, before ice cream vans were predatory, being outside was the goal. Parents would shove you outside, they would throw balls and apples and hopefully lure you away from the inner residence of your house. That used to be the norm. Then, of course, video games came along and ruined everything for everybody, didn't they? So there were some really interesting criticisms for people who play games. But once again, nowadays, not so bad. A lot of the people that were gamers as a kid who had those prejudices have now grown up into adults. They're having children and gaming's in the household already, so it's way more acceptable. People are growing up with it, so just the general vision of what gaming is and what gaming means is different now. And it's different for the better, unless you're a horny parent. But just comparing things, I love the contrasts that people do, you know. It's a lot of them are so much bullshit, but they put them out there, and unfortunately some people believe it, and it gets more traction than it ever deserved. You know, weird stuff like staring at TVs is going to make you go blind. And I am under no illusion that there will be instances where looking at screens or televisions for certain people at certain parts of their life could cause damage to them. The eye is a degenerative organ in the body. You know, it's one of those things where we will never have perfect eyes, and our eyesight is going to degrade. It is a process of atrophy that you can't avoid. Everyone's going to have eyes at the beginning, hopefully, and then at the end, they're going to be worse than they were at the beginning. That is just a fact. Your skin's going to go the same way, your teeth are going to go the same way, your nails are going to go the same way, your hair, your hairline, insert whatever you like or think is awesome about you right now. It's going to fail. I don't want to depress anybody with this fact, but unfortunately, you know, we decay. That's what we do. We're pretty good at it. Turns out we rot while we're alive, and then we die. That's the end. So, the whole idea that you're going to go blind or you're going to hurt your eyes staring at screens, there is a lot of validity in that case to certain people who have eye problems, but then there's me, and I'm probably betting a couple 100 million other people who I can stare at a screen for 17 hours a day, if need be. And then when I stand at the top of my road, like, a good 400 meters down the road, there can be a bus turn the corner and I can tell you what number it is. Give it a couple more seconds, if it's a car, and I can tell you its license plate. Like, I can read small fonts at great distances. Why aren't my eyes fucked? Why aren't I blind? Why aren't I this poster child that video games are the devil? Because, of course, everybody's different. Some people have a proclivity towards that kind of shit, some people don't. So these misnomers are just stupid. And isn't it funny how playing video games for large periods of times is obviously going to turn you into a rapist and a murderer and an antisocial person. But if you sit on ass watching TV, then you're just one of the guys, you know? You're just watching the sports channel, you're watching the news channel, you're watching Big Brother or celebrity television, you're just part of the group. Like, you can sit for 8 hours watching TV, and you're just a functioning human being who's relaxing outside of work. But if you spend your time doing video games for that period of time, then you're essentially Jeffrey Dahmer before he finally dragged his first victim into a van. Why? How is it different? Because when you think about it, watching television is passive. You aren't taking part in anything. You're not participating. You are a passive observer. You aren't motivating yourself other than potentially doing a quiz show, so maybe you're racking your brain a little bit, or trying to figure out who the murderer is in a film or something. If you're watching football, you're probably just sat there dribbling down yourself, touching yourself, because you don't realise you're doing it, because there's a large percentage of men who kind of put their hands down their pants and don't realise it, which I find to be quite fucking grim, personally, because I'm not a big fan. I like to wash my hands, like clean hands, but, you know, and you might even be having a snack when you pull that hand out to reach across to that bowl of whatever your favourite snack is to do while you vegetate on the couch watching television. But nobody critiques that. Nobody judges that. But if you have a console on and a controller in your hand, all of a sudden you're a child molester or you're a maniac or there's something wrong with you. And there's so many sources that do this strange kind of victimization, demonization, if you think about it, where, like, you look in the instructions for consoles and games, and they're like, you should probably take a 15-minute break every 1 hour playing a well-lit room, preferably in like a mansion, with a nice wealthy bank account, and and a subscription to Mayfair. Like, there's all these weird stipulations of how you should play, and that's from the people who designed the tools that you're playing on. And I'm not too sure what this is, because I've never looked at it logically with smart people before, but I think the moment we realised just how lucrative gaming was going to become, that a lot of that kind of, propaganda bullshit faded away with media. Because let's face it, a lot of the ways that they try to control society and they try to control your habits and your behaviour patterns is by telling you what's good for you and by telling you what's bad for you. And you'll notice that there's a lot of adverts, isn't there? There's a lot of pieces of news and smear campaigns against drugs. Because drugs are these things that make you kill children. The drugs are these things that make you chew through your cheek and suffocate in your own vomit by bouncing on happy castles until you faceplant into the earth from jumping off a building because you thought you could fly. Drugs are these things that if you do them, you will become a destroyer of man and ruin families. And they're against them pretty much. And it's changing a little bit, getting a bit more flexible as people realise that a lot of drugs are just a fun time. As long as you're safe and you're not a dickhead, you'll do fine. But then the next advert is on about alcohol and how gambling and like, how can we have Bud Light adverts after don't do drugs adverts when alcohol is a drug, caffeine is a drug, paracetamols are wonderful, they stop pain, they are painkillers, they are prescribable, you can buy more bullets than you can paracetamols because that's how powerful they are. Yet there's never, a massive tirade against the people who drink, and just look at the statistics on alcohol. There's more people who drink than do almost anything else. Drinking is a poison. It's always been a poison. The reason you have the effect that you get when you're drunk is because it's fucking with your body. It's affecting you on a physiological level, on a biological level. It's damaging you. It's willful, voluntary damage. That's what you're doing. But nobody looks at it like that. No television shows tell you that, do they? But instead, if you play a video game like Grand Theft Auto, you're nicking cars before you're 12. Why? It doesn't make sense to me. And you see it everywhere. Oh, by the way, this is a mandatory fight against a bouncer, and he's going to rush you, and this guy clips into me, and I can't move. I'm literally stuck, so I just have to embrace the grind here, because you don't have any mobility if you start clipping. It's really frustrating. But how can they, with tongue-in-cheek, go on about that kind of stuff when it's just not true? And it forces people who are gamers to criticise other people who game. Have you noticed that? There's a lot of people who critique other people and how they consume their video games. And my girlfriend has a wonderful piece of observation when it comes to this. Like, you would think that gamers would unify because they are such a niche community, which is admittedly getting a lot wider now. It's being more accepted. But we thrive on the tribalism in gaming, on, oh, I'm part of this community, but fuck that community. They're doing it wrong, we're doing it right. And there's all this loyalty to little cliques with inside gaming that essentially just exist to fluff up a certain developer or publisher and ostracize people who like other games. I don't get that. Like, I've done it, and I do it, but I still don't get it when I take a step back. And people are really, really quick to do it. Like, how many people do you know that will insult you for playing an MMO, or insult you for playing a MOBA, something like that? There's all these memes, isn't there, about lanes, about jungling, about macro keys and Dota stuff and all that. And admittedly, I don't know a lot about these games, so I can't partake. But I see them enough to understand that people are mocked for playing a very skill-dependent, difficult game to learn that can be very lucrative if you play it at high levels. Isn't it weird that? Like, look at the elitism in the FGC with fighting games. Fighting games are such a small pocket of the overall ethos of gaming that you would think they would be begging for new people, for fresh blood to help it expand and grow. And you have really, really intelligent people who've realised that that's the only future for that kind of scene, is to embrace the new player and not quite be so elitist and reticent to change. People like Alex Valle, who probably in their youth were just as bad as anybody else, console scrubs and that kind of stuff. Being really, if you don't play on an arcade stick, you're not a proper fighting game player. If you weren't, built in the arcade, you're not a proper fighting game player. Tons of fun ways to ostracize people who like the same shit as you, but you can't do it because they're not a different color to you. So you've got to create this weird bullshit. You use mouse and keyboard. I use controller. You're poor, I'm rich. This is caviar, you have McDonald's. All this kind of bullshit that we invent so that we can go, mine's shinier than yours. you know? It's weird. But fighting games, they're so difficult to get into, because the moment you go into them, you're up against a guy who's been playing for 20 years and he absolutely stomps you, and at the end of it, he calls you a scrub. He doesn't help you and said, dude, you might want to look at this, or do this, or maybe try this, or invite you to a private lobby to have some sets with you and pick some different characters and not go easy, but show you what the game can do and help you learn, because they just want to stomp. And it's this weird thing of when the new players come in, it dilutes the pedigree of why these things are great. Gamers hating other gamers, it's such a strange thing. And then there's stuff that should be lamented, there's stuff that should be criticised and just condemned and just absolutely stripped clean and crucified. Like those weird people who play certain games for such lengths of time that their children die. You know, you can't defend that. There's no defending that. I don't care if you birthed Hitler too. You can't let it die, because it could turn out to be nice. You never know. Could have a better moustache. We don't know. You can't force this shit on children, tabula rasa and all that. But here's an example of a situation that you're going to get into in your life if you're somebody like me who likes video games, is unashamed that they like them, and spends quite a large amount of time a week playing games. You're going to be in a situation where you're in a group of people who aren't necessarily your friends, but you're jovial and you're nice to them because you're a decent human being, and you're going to get onto the topic of games with them, but their opinion on games is going to be so alien to yours that you can't even come to a common ground and have a conversation, because if you talk to them about certain parts of that game, they're just not going to follow you because they don't care and they don't have the same kind of knowledge that you do. And it's not an insult to them, it's just they do different things. And there will come a moment where you realise that this person thinks of himself as a gamer and he plays 30 minutes of game a week and thinks that's too much, and will in fact go a little bit further as to say, I don't know how people can play for X amount of hours. And then in your head you're thinking, I don't know how you get off the fucking menu, because if I only played for like 30 minutes a day, I would never get past the updates that all these stupid machines need now, so I'd never play the game. Like, the stuff that I've achieved in games would never have come unless I sat down and persevered, because it's just... That's kind of how games are. They're time sinks. They steal time. So you can't even come to a middle ground with this person because you're on two completely different planes. And I find it fascinating to hear their perspective. Like when people play short amounts of time, but they do it incrementally. Aren't you still playing the same amount of time? You're just spreading it out. Like, how is that any different? It's like those people who judge you for playing 8 hours of video games, yet they'll go and sit on arse and watch TV for 8 hours and don't see the contrast or the correlation. Such an interesting thing, isn't it? We have this passion that should unify us and bring us together because it's something that isn't, as ubiquitous as say, football. Yet, all we do is try and push each other away.